Great, so last week we left off with Shabbatai Zvi, who is the beginning of pretty much all modern trends in Judaism. He was a false messiah. He claimed to be the messiah, but probably wasn't. In the end, he converted to Islam, and that sent shockwaves through the whole Jewish community. There are a lot of jokes about how Jews can't agree on things. There's one where there's a Jew who gets stranded on a desert island alone. When he finally gets rescued, the rescuers are like, "Oh, what's this building that you've built here?" And he says, "That's the synagogue." And they say, "What's this other building?" And he says, "That's the other synagogue, but we don't go there." However, Lurianic Kabbalah, which is a specific type of Jewish mysticism, was extremely popular and was accepted by pretty much all Jews around the world all at once. This is a very rare occurrence. And Shabbatai's teachings drew a lot from Lurianic Kabbalah. He was also widely accepted, and the conversion threw everybody for a pretty big loop. And nobody's really sure. He went to visit the Sultan of somewhere, thinking that he'd be able to convert him to Judaism. But when he came back out, he had converted. So we're not sure if the Sultan just had a really confusing argument, or if there was a threat of violence involved, or maybe money. We really don't know. But he spent the rest of his life pretty much under house arrest in the Sultan's house. And
so is this Kabbalah the same as Madonna's Kabbalah?
Madonna's Kabbalah is weird. No. Well, sort of. Lurianic just means that my mouse is in place. The Kabbalah of Isaac Luria, who was a big Kabbalah teacher. Everybody likes that guy except for me.
Apostatize, the last.
That just means leaving the religion.
Okay.
Yeah. So pretty much every major trend in Judaism since has been either a response to Shabbatai's shocking apostasy in some way or another. And now we start our modern history timeline. So we're going to start in 1700. We have the beginning of the life of the Baal Shem Tov. That's not his real name. His real name was Israel ben Eliezer. Baal Shem Tov is a nickname. It's Hebrew for keeper of the good name. And he founded Hasidic Judaism, which some people might have heard of. If you go to New York City, you'll see like the Jews have very nice clothes and the funny hats. And those are Hasidic Jews.
Are they the ones with
Yeah, the peyot, yes. The curls on the sides of their heads. They're very observant these days. In the beginning, the Baal Shem Tov's whole agenda was kind of, in those days, Judaism was very focused on scholarship and study. People would spend all day studying the Torah, studying the Talmud, and the community was a little bit elitist in this regard. You weren't considered a good Jew unless you were very studious. The Baal Shem Tovs didn't really vibe with that, and he thought that personal spirituality should be just as important as scholarship. So he sort of, intentionally or not, created this whole movement, and much of world Jewry today is pretty divided between the Hasidim and the not Hasidim. In 1740, we've got the beginnings of the British just getting rid of their Jews by sending them to the American colonies. Jews were allowed to be fully naturalized, sort of American British citizens. And then we have the American Revolution in 1776-ish, which of course guaranteed religious freedom for all Americans, at least in theory. But the Jews did immensely benefit from this and were able to practice their religion pretty openly and not be very discriminated against, that's the word. 1789, we have the French Revolution, which was pretty much the American Revolution, except in France. The French Revolution really emphasized a lot of the same things: civil liberty, Enlightenment thinking, reason over sort of more traditional religiously based thought. French Revolution had a huge effect in all of Europe because Napoleon conquered a lot of Europe during his time and spread the ideals of the French Revolution to countries that he conquered. So this was around the time that Jews first started gaining citizenship in European countries. In 1820 to 1860, we have the beginnings of the modern Orthodox movement in Judaism. And the goal of modern Orthodoxy was to figure out how Jews could live in this Enlightenment world where they suddenly have citizenship and legal protections and are allowed to participate more fully in society, but they still wanted to retain their Judaism. So the project of modern Orthodoxy was to sort of adapt Jewish law and Jewish tradition to the goal of living in society as members of the national sort of community rather than just an isolated Jewish community. Around 1840 to 1870, we have the rise of the two other major Jewish denominations, Reform Judaism and Conservative Judaism. Reform Judaism was similar to modern Orthodoxy, aiming towards integrating into society, but they went very much further and essentially gave up a lot of Jewish law and tradition in order to fit in more better. A lot of Reform synagogues were built to resemble Christian churches and cathedrals. They adopted the organ music, and they are not at all strict about Jewish law. You'll find Reform Jews today eating bacon and working on the Sabbath, all that kind of stuff. Conservative Judaism tried to find a middle ground between those two. Much more adaptable. For example, the modern Orthodox will not turn on lights or drive on the Sabbath. Conservative Jews generally will. Their thought process is that Jewish law needs to adapt to the times, but they also don't want to give up their identity and their traditions.
Laws come
There's no pope.
like with anti-Baptists and stuff. It's like that. Like
No, they come from the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew
but I'm
Bible.
just saying, who can see? How does that?
It comes from a group of rabbis in a building somewhere who have these discussions,
Like a
and
college.
sort of, yeah, we would consider it a court of law. Yes. The Reform would consider Jewish law not to be binding.
At all.
Right.
So the conservative has to.
Yeah, it's more voluntary. Like, if you want to be really devout, then you can. What was the other part of that
It's
question?
binding. I was just wondering if conservative has college looking at the laws allowing for
Mhm.
the whole.
Yes. Yeah, if you go on to, if you look up the Conservative Judaism website, there's a section on the site called Responsa, and these are essentially rabbinic responses to different legal questions that have been brought up, and they are several pages of just like, this is our basis for this ruling. Here's what the Torah says. Here's what the Talmud says. Here's what modern society is like, and this is why we're making this decision about whether or not we think you should be allowed to do this or that.
Can I?
Mhm.
There's a lot of questions. I got you, Jackson.
It's reform. Yeah.
Now you know binding. No, I'm
Sure.
just kidding. That's what I was thinking.
So it kind of goes by. I mean, you sort of like a guy in the desert.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a Reform Jew, and I might not go to a Reform temple if there were any other options.
Right.
But it's the only one in Jackson, so, and the people there are really great. I love them, so it's fine.
So you would yourself more modern orthodox?
I'd consider myself a Reconstructionist, but that comes later.
Now you're trying to confuse me.
These are the 3 major ones. Reconstructionist is kind of small. It didn't gain too much traction. Okay, 1881 to 1920 is a difficult time for European Jews. We have 3 major waves of pogroms. A pogrom is basically violent, semi-organized attacks against Jewish communities. A lot of these were caused by a belief called the blood libel, which is the belief that Jews kidnapped Christian children and used their blood to make the Passover matzah.
Ew.
I would like to clarify that human blood is not kosher. In fact, no blood is kosher. We are not allowed to eat blood, which makes preparing meat a little more complicated. No, fortunately, even though they're so I remember them. So we had 3 different major waves of pogroms, and tens of thousands of Jews in Russia and Ukraine especially were killed. In 1938 to 1945, we have, of course, the Holocaust, which the Jews today we call it the Shoah. The reason for the change in terms is that the Holocaust is a word that essentially means punishment for sin, but we don't like to think of it that way, and Shoah just means like major disaster. And this is, of course, I think everybody knows, when Hitler's Germany systematically exterminated 6 million Jews and about 6 million others. and is the cause of a whole slew of very strange History Channel documentations about Nazi weapons and secret Nazi.
Movies.
Yes, yeah. The documentaries are kind of funny, but they're also just really weird. 1968, we have the beginnings of Reconstructionist Judaism, what I mentioned before. It's a rabbi called Mordecai Kaplan, who he envisioned Judaism not as a religion like the three major denominations do, but as sort of a society, or what does it say here? A civilization. So really all-encompassing in terms of, your identity. Words are hard. I think most denominations today would admit to having sort of adopted a lot of Kaplan's ideas. But Reconstructionist Judaism does still have a small presence in America, and I'm
That's
not
what
sure
you
what
say
to
you are?
Yeah, yes.
Now, what about the people that are in like Ann Arbor and stuff? What, here?
There are a few different temples in Ann Arbor, so I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Like the most liberal case, like there'd be a lot of reconstruction.
The only Reconstructionist temple I know of in the state is in the Detroit area. It's in Ferndale.
And so does the Reconstructionists.
Yeah, we just have kind of different ideas about how things should be done, but it's kind of subtle to differentiate between Reconstructionist and conservative. They're very similar these days. There's been a lot of exchange of ideas, kind of closer together.
So would you say you are further away from the beginning ones, the older generations?
I'm not sure what you mean by further.
Back in the 1800s.
1700s.
17, 18.
You mentioned conservative, so you're saying you're more conservative rather than liberal. But this seems liberal. to me.
Not conservative versus liberal, but the movement known as conservative, which is not very conservative at all.
Okay.
It's very confusing. The name conservative was in response to the Reform movement, which was so liberal with Jewish law. Conservative Jews wanted to have the same sort of social ideals, but keep more of the Jewish law. So they're conservative in comparison to the Reform Jews. We are continuously reconstructing the civilization of Judaism, like a Jewish way of life, a way of being. Huh?
Would it be like updating it?
Yes.
Evolving.
Yes. One of the major differences is that Reconstructionist Jews generally we don't have necessarily a court of chief rabbis making rulings, and more at a community level, people in the community will be the ones deciding for themselves what Jewish law is and means and how it should be followed.
Is there an element of Jewish?
No, we are not talking about nationalism. Civilization and nationalism are two different things. Nation states are a very specific political entity, and I am not fond of them at all. And in 2025, we have right now, and you're in this class and you're listening to me.
We get kisses.
All right, we're gonna now move into holidays a bit. And
Oh, thank you.
I wrote a little bit of stuff about each holiday. I'm sure there's plenty that I have forgotten to mention, and if my TA was here, he would help to remind. He's on his way. He'll be here sometime. So we have three different types of holidays. Basically, we have the high holidays, which are extremely important ones. We have major holidays or Torah holidays. These are the holidays that are described in the Torah. And we have historical holidays or minor holidays, and these are holidays that just commemorate historical events and are the least. They don't have rules or restrictions for what we can and can't do, but the rest of them do. So the first of the high holidays, there's two of them. The first is Rosh Hashanah, which means the New Year. And during Rosh Hashanah, we try to emphasize we're preparing for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So it's a time of reflection, a time of reevaluating our lives and where we are, what we're doing. The chief way that we celebrate Rosh Hashanah is by hearing the shofar. The shofar is the ram's horn that is blown during certain ritual occasions. Or if you're really enthusiastic about shofar, you blow it every sunrise. But for the most part, most people don't bring it out except for Rosh Hashanah and a couple other holidays. The commandment, interestingly enough, is not to blow the shofar, but to hear it. So you don't actually have to do the blowing yourself.
Where do you pick one of them up at?
Shofar store.
Pretty much any Jewish Judaica store will have shofars. Yes.
Does that coincide with what we?
It's a different time of year.
Isn't it in December still? Or-
No,
Or
I
is that-
think it's in October this year.
So it goes around a little?
It does move around because the Jews use a lunar calendar instead of a
okay.
solar calendar.
Kind of like base.
That's not exactly a lunar thing, though. It's a solunar system, which it's a word for solar and lunar. Yeah, we have
Christmas
to
is always this day.
we have to add in a leap month like every other year to sort of keep in line with the movements of the sun. So on the Jewish calendar, it's always on the same day, but on this calendar, it can move around significantly. And during this time, we pretty much obey the Sabbath laws, which is no work, no kindling fire, no writing, no carrying. Judy had a question. Does she still have it?
Yes. How does your feel about the blowing the shofar? Catholic insurrection carried in a shofar.
How does my community feel about it?
Sure.
Probably PS.
We're not too fond of people blowing the shofar,
I mean,
especially as part of a non-Jewish religious service. But there are other kinds of horns that aren't specifically shofars. I'm not familiar with this incident, but pretty much every culture around the world has made instruments out of horns. So it's
just
kind of
wondered if you,
complicated. Christian fundamentalists specifically, there's a lot of Christian groups who are starting to sort of adopt Jewish practices for some reason, and we're not too fond of that.
Next holiday.
Okay, Yom Kippur. Oh, I wrote a lot. We'll just start here. Yom Kippur is the most important day of the Jewish year. It's the Day of Atonement. It's 9 days after Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is the strictest day of the year. In addition to not being allowed to work or kindle fire or all the other things that we can't do on the Sabbath, we also cannot, we can't anoint with oils or perfumes, cannot eat, we can't engage in sexual relations, we can't wear leather shoes, and we cannot bathe.
Oh, when does this happen? This is in October, right? You have the day off. She won't be able to.
Yeah, you don't have to do this.
You can't eat anything.
No,
I have to fast.
You have to
Yeah.
fast the whole day.
Yeah, it's only like after dinner, after sunset that you can eat.
Right, because
And
the
allowed
Jewish
down on.
Yeah, the Jewish day begins and ends at sunset. So after sunset, we would be allowed to eat, but we're expected to fast the whole day. These days, if you have, certain health issues or just really need to eat, then no one's going to stop you because your health is important. But someone like me, who has no real need to eat, would be expected to fast for the whole 25 hours.
Crazy.
25.
25, there's an extra hour because of some rabbinical nonsense.
And is it the hour tacked at the end, or is it hour, or is it split?
So, in order to make sure that nobody is accidentally breaking the law and doing things too early, the rabbis decided that on holidays, the day starts once the sun is below the horizon, but it doesn't end until you can see 3 stars in the sky. So there's some extra time there. If it's cloudy, then, you still know the time at which would be able to stars.
Okay. I thought we had
Starved.
3 hours.
Yeah. Your stomach would be growling like crazy. Give me food.
So you're praying most all this day? Is that what's happening?
Almost the entire day is prayers. Yeah, if you look online, you can find tables of different important times during the day for Jews. They're called zamanim. Like on the Chabad website, Judy knows that one. You'll find a whole bunch of different times for all the different prayers or different observances. So we know ahead of time when the day officially ends. It's all been calculated. Astronomy is amazing. We don't really do individual prayer hardly at all. It's almost entirely community stuff.
So you go out the day at temple?
Yeah, that was my
Yeah,
question.
we'd spend the entire day at the synagogue
Oh, okay.
And why can't you wear leather?
because we're supposed to be thinking about, it's the Day of Atonement, so we should be thinking about our conduct over the last year, the ways that we have fallen short or taken advantage of others, hurt others, and wearing nice, comfortable shoes is antithetical to that mindset. Is the thinking. So we're meant to wear uncomfortable shoes and I don't want to say wallow, but that's the word that's coming to mind.
So you're starving yourself in uncomfortable shoes. No, thank you.
Yeah, humble yourself. That works.
Are all prayers?
No, some are in Aramaic.
Oh, and grief.
There you go.
Amen, yeah.
So you got to learn another language.
Yes,
Sign you up, right?
you know a little Aramaic though.
Oh?
Yep, the words abracadabra are Aramaic. Aramaic prayers sound a little bit magical because of a lot of magicians used Aramaic because it sounded mysterious.
Interesting.
What is Africa?
Presto change, hocus pocus.
Now coming up with words.
Check this out.
Cool.
So
Do people know where hocus pocus?
I'm sure someone does, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Halloween.
It's from the Catholic Mass, the Latin hoc est pax. It is the moment in the Mass when the elements change from being bread and wine to
I thought that was like the mystery.
Well, that is, yeah.
I just knew it was from Halloween.
So the first thing that we do before sunset, the day before Yom Kippur starts, so like minutes before Yom Kippur starts,
Edel.
that too. But there's a specific Aramaic prayer called Kol Nidre, and this is sort of a magical incantation that will release us of any unfulfilled vows that we have. This is a little bit ironic because in the Torah we are forbidden from making vows in the first place, but a lot of people still do it. So just to be safe, we will annul any vows that we've made during the year so that we're not held accountable for them.
So does that mean like the vows that people take for marriage?
That's a good question.
Is that
Got you
like
on that one.
confession?
No. Yeah.
Unfulfilled.
Vow. How do I explain vow?
If you vow to unfulfilled vows, it says
Commitment.
Well, there's a regular promise, right? And then there's like a vow, which is sort of like I will put collateral against this promise, whether that's material collateral or reputational collateral or spiritual collateral. That would be a sort of spiritual collateral. Like if I don't fulfill this, I will be responsible to God for not fulfilling it.
So like how people say they're gonna lose weight during the year? Their vow for the New Year's?
There's not much at stake there, though. If you put $1,000 into an account and said, if I don't lose weight, this money will go to a charity or something, then that would be a vow.
Otherwise, resolve try this.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I will.
As far as wedding vows go, we don't do those. We have, there's something called a ketubah, which is a wedding contract. And this is a tradition that we have carried over from the olden days when weddings were not really about love, but more about the exchange of goods and the building of familial alliances. So marriage for us is more of a legal matter and less of a, well, I guess it depends on your
Not a
community because
romance.
there are still people who will marry for love. But if you go into a really traditional community, like a lot of Hasidic communities still do arranged marriages. But as far as Jewish law is concerned, there's no vows involved. It is a legally binding sort of agreement. So wedding vows would not be annulled because we haven't made them.
You learn some new.
And we have a lot of these fun prayers in Aramaic that are just like, hocus pocus, this thing is symbolically done. And I really enjoy them. They're super fun. Great, so we spend the entire day in synagogue, we discuss that. Yep, we'll pretty much, at my synagogue, we'll go sunrise to sunset. We'll take some breaks so that we can, rest and not go insane and start banging our heads against the wall. Most of the prayers are focused on reflection and atonement. And we have also the Yizkor, which is a prayer of remembrance. My synagogue, we will actually go to the Jewish cemetery. We have the oldest Jewish cemetery in Michigan, here in Jackson.
Really?
It's a designated historical site and everything. It's right across from the Taco Bell on Ganson.
Westdale.
Yes, west. Yep.
Oh.
Underneath the Officer, what's his name, Bono Memorial Bridge.
Mhm.
Right. Yep.
We're away baking used to or whatever. Sure.
So we'll go there and we'll have specific prayers that we say to remember the dead. And during morning prayer, we recite the entire book of Jonah.
How long is that thing?
Yeah, Jonah's very short. It's just a few pages. Why Jonah? Because Jonah is a book all about sinning. Jonah is possibly the worst prophet in the world, if you're familiar with this story. God tells him to go to Nineveh and tell them to repent. He says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to run away. Gets on a boat in the other direction. And God sends a storm. And Jonah says, all right, I'm causing the storm. Throw me overboard. They do. He gets eaten by a fish. While he's in the fish, he prays for forgiveness. He says, God, I know that you're merciful and just, and you'll forgive all iniquity. So God forgives him. The fish spits him up on the shores of Nineveh. He walks into the town. And instead of actually saying what God told him to say, which is repent or Nineveh will be destroyed, he just says Nineveh will be destroyed and calls it a day and leaves. Luckily for the Ninevites, the king understands the message anyways and has everybody repent and wear sackcloth, which is extremely uncomfortable. It's essentially burlap. If you've ever worn a burlap sack or done like a sack race, it's super scratchy. And they put ashes on their heads. It is also very uncomfortable. So it's all about, repenting, atoning for your wrongdoings via your own discomfort, sort of. But Jonah leaves the city and he kind of sits down on a hill and waits for the city to be destroyed and is extremely upset when it isn't destroyed because he hates the Ninevites. And the book ends with him arguing with God and saying, see, this is why I didn't want to come here, because you're merciful and I knew you would spare them if they repented, and I really didn't want them. And I think that is a fitting story for Yom Kippur. And we end the day with a final blowing of the shofar. Hey! Started without you. We're on holidays. So if you have anything to interject about the high holidays.
It's on my head now.
Alright. So the goal of Yom Kippur is to get our atonements in before God closes the book of life, in which he has written down all the names of everyone who will die over the next year. And we have a prayer called the Ne'ilah, which lists all of the fun ways that people will die over the year, like death by drowning, death by fire, death by...
These are very ancient. It's sort of more tradition.
Basically, everybody who will die by any means over the next year. I hope I'm not one of them, but if I am, this is my atonement for my life. Blow the shofar one last time and we're done. We can eat. Right, so those are the two high holidays. Next, we've got the major holidays, which are all based on commandments in the Torah, and they all involve some restrictions on our behavior during the day. Maybe the best known one is Pesach, or Passover. This is the festival of unleavened bread, which celebrates the exodus from Egypt. Unleavened bread because when the Jews were escaping Egypt, they didn't have time to let their bread rise. So to commemorate this, we eat gross crackers, which I think used to be just flatbreads before it kind of got standardized by later rabbinical rulings, but now they're gross crackers.
It's a crack or whatever.
Matzah, yes.
So unleavened is more than just necessarily bread. The rules have kind of expanded over time to forbidden grains that we're not allowed to.
Wheat, barley, oat, rye, and spelt.
Right. So it's not just no bread, it's no pasta, no like cakes or pastries, no so like pancakes, waffles, anything like that.
Pizza.
Yeah, no pizza. So corn and rice is a really fun one. That is up to what we would call minhag, which means tradition.
Like a regional custom.
Exactly. So different groups of Jews that split off into different areas of the world after the expulsion kind of developed different opinions on whether or not corn and rice should be allowed. Our congregation is Ashkenazi, so they go by corn and rice count as forbidden grains, and they're not technically allowed during Passover. However, there are other congregations in the country called Sephardi, which are Spanish Jews that wound up in Spain after expulsion, and they over time developed customs that did allow rice and corn during Passover. So Sephardi Jews will corn and
So
rice.
can you go over to their side and the pasta?
We're not allowed to. So Judaism passes down through the matrilineal line, but minhag passes down through the patrilineal line. So if you have a Jewish mother and a Jewish father, but the mother is Ashkenazi and the father is Sephardi, then the children will be Sephardi, and the wife is traditionally meant to take on the upper husband's family.
So question, what is matzah? What grain?
It is made of, but it's prepared in a very specific way. I think you have 7 minutes from when you add the water to the flour that you have to get it in the oven to prevent any leavening from occurring.
That's why you'll see some boxes of matzah marked as not kosher for Passover or not for Passover use, because those are technically matzah, but they weren't timed very specifically. They were just kind of factored.
So Passover is for 7 days. We're forbidden from eating or possessing any of the 5 grains, the leavening foods. There's a loophole that the rabbis invented where we can sell all of our chametz to a non-Jew and then buy it back after Passover. But in order for it to be legal, the Gentile has to not have any obligation to sell it back. But generally, Jewish communities will find somebody who, friendly to Jews, and usually the same person every year. They'll sort of form a relationship, and they'll symbolically sell their hametz for, say, $1, and then they'll give the $1 back after Passover. You're supposed to, yeah.
You're even supposed to deep clean them. They don't have like crumbs or anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a process called
Gluten-free.
kashering, which means making kosher, and
You'll see some Jews, especially more Orthodox communities, wrap essentially their entire kitchen foil to ensure the during the Passover.
And the Jewish baker. Yeah.
Yeah, they close up shop for the week.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, and you'll see people be leading up to Passover, bleaching their counters, taking a blowtorch to their oven to symbolically burn away any crumbs.
That's beyond.
And so what is the reasoning behind this? What is the religious reason why they don't like leavened bread, or what?
It's in the Torah. God commands remember the Exodus by doing this.
In the Exodus story, it's specifically mentioned that the bread is unleavened, and then it's in our Haggadah, which is a Passover Seder sort of booklet that we recite every year. It mentions that they did not have enough time to let their bread rise before they left flat bread.
Kind of like the Eucharist. Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. It's essentially, God says, do this to remember the Exodus.
Remember what I wrote.
Yes. And there's a ritual that a lot of more sort of observant Jews will partake in, where they take a feather and a dustpan and they'll symbolically sweep away the last crumbs, and then they'll take it outside and burn it. So on the first and last days of Passover, we follow the Sabbath work restrictions. The first night, we do what's called a Passover Seder, which is a ritualistic meal. There is a specific order to it. Seder is Hebrew for order, not order as in like order versus chaos, but like this thing.
Protocol.
Sequential.
Yeah, yes. There's a lot of blessings over wine. We wash our hands. We eat vegetables dipped in salt water to symbolize the tears of the Hebrew slaves. We eat bitter herbs to remember their suffering, and we also drop out some wine in remembrance of the plagues and the deaths of the Egyptians, because we like our moral ambiguity. There is a story that when Pharaoh's armies were drowned in the Red Sea, a couple of angels started celebrating, and God said, "Why are you celebrating? The Egyptians are my creation."
I'm gonna say the Passover has kind of changed meaning over time. It was celebrated in different periods of both inhabitation in Eretz Israel, and times of exile, so scattered. During, especially leading up to 1948, Pesach was often much more about this unity and the longing for Jerusalem, whether that be literal physical sense or sort of in a spiritual sense of, that's why you'll often at the Passover end it by saying next. However, since 1948, there's been a lot of reckoning with what the story of the Passover has kind of come to mean, similar with story. So there's often a lot of discussion during the Passover about the plagues and what it can be Jewish when this narrative shows like God is doing these terrible things on our behalf. Sort of, it is turned to the discussion a lot over time as it.
Yeah, what it means for our liberation to come at the expense of others. Next major holiday is Shavuot. It was originally an agricultural harvest festival.
Probably.
Right, probably. Almost, I guess I won't say that. No, it is definitely originally agricultural. It's in the Torah. And it's only for one day, during which work is prohibited, and we commemorate it by studying Torah all day. This is a more recent practice that originated during the heyday of the Kabbalists, and they had just discovered coffee and realized that they could stay up all night. The idea here is that the Jews were asleep during the revelation at Sinai, and therefore, they messed up, and so it's incumbent on us to make up for that sin by studying the revelation for 25 straight hours. And there's a specific book that is supposed to be pretty much all of the essential parts of Torah, and that is the book that we would study.
This is turned into different traditions. So, like for our Passover, for our Shavuot this year, we went to a sort of big community Jewish learning event in Detroit that went late into the, and we did actual class about the popularization of the all-night learning with the rise of coffee.
And there's food. Ours was kind of like there were like different workshops with different teachers. They had 2 running, so you could pick one topic or another.
Didn't we also get an explainer on the dairy at this thing?
Rabbi says traditionally you'll eat dairy during Shavuot, and our rabbi says it's just because that's probably around the time when cows produce the most milk. We're not really sure why.
Shavuot can land end of May into early January.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that Christians then offer something to those.
I'm sure it's a mixture of cultural memory and also just kind of these sort of festival holidays around the same times for everybody.
True. And then Seder is.
Did you say Pentecost? How long after? Yeah, pretty much. Because Shavuot is 50 days after Passover.
So you're talking about, those early kind of summers.
The cool thing about Christianity was how infinitely adaptable it was and it fit into the cultures that it came in. So it makes perfect sense for it to still that sort of carryover.
I guess, what exactly is considered work? How does one
Get time off.
eat or do anything without working? I mean, you caring for me, you gotta change diapers.
It's a great question.
Okay, this is a large topic. Essentially, you probably should have all of your food cooked before the holiday starts.
No cook for
And
you.
you still have to open the refrigerator.
You unscrew
Actually,
light bulb in your refrigerator.
Most
just
refrigerators, because they have that automatic light detection, a lot of more observant Jews will tape over the little detector so that the light doesn't turn on, because that would count as kindling for them.
Many extremely Orthodox Jews will also pre-tear squares of toilet paper for the day because tearing is on the list of forbidden things.
OMG!
That's true.
Diapers, because of we're also not allowed to glue or unglue things. So depending on your community, some allow diapers and some will not allow like the modern diaper. So you would have to use maybe cloth diapers for that day.
That poor child.
Basically, the Torah defines work.
I know, I did.
The Torah defines work as any of the things that were involved in building the tabernacle in the desert. So
it's not so much necessarily forbidding like the spirit of work. It's not forbidding doing labor or service necessarily. It's forbidding a list of specific actions, and this is litigated over endlessly.
No.
Yep.
What about driving, like if you have to drive to God?
kindling.
Kindling, and it's also wasting fuel.
And then, but it's not in your hood to go for the day.
It depends on your community.
Oh, okay.
Orthodox Jews will tend to live within walking distance.
Oh.
But conservative and on that side of the spectrum, they've decided that it's better for you to go to synagogue
Yes.
than to not.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can drive to synagogue and back home, but you probably shouldn't drive anywhere else.
It's the conservative movement that basically said electric cars are okay.
Yes, conservatives say electric cars are fine.
Yeah. If you have
Because
an
there's
electric
no
car, you're
internal
good
combustion.
to go.
Yeah.
Conservatives disagree that electricity is fire. Electricity is not fire, in my opinion. Okay, next we have my favorite holiday, Sukkot. Oh, geez, a lot of text. Sukkot is the...
Over Lag BaOmer a little.
Yeah, because that could have been in minor holidays, but I wanted to focus. Sukkot is the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles.
Huh?
A tabernacle or a booth, or a sukkah, all synonyms, is kind of a ramshackle temporary dwelling.
So sukkah, Sukkot would be the plural of that. So Sukkot is many sukkah, but sukkah means a sort of tent, like a shelter, basically.
It's not a tent.
Not a tent, but yeah.
I
It
have all
is-
the rules listed for.
Oh, sorry.
But, well, it's not on the screen yet because I wrote too much.
It's an
Skipping
impromptu
ahead.
shelter.
Essentially, in order to remember the 40 years of wandering in the desert, we build these little booths and live in them for a week. The bare minimum is eating your meals in the sukkah. More observant people will just live in them full time and sleep in them and everything. We are exempt from staying in the sukkah during bad weather, but it's considered very bad luck to have bad weather during Sukkot because it's preventing you from fulfilling a mitzvah, fulfilling a commandment, and so it's sort of like an omen that your year is going to be pretty unfortunate.
Is it inside your house?
It has to be outside.
And what time of year does this
On the roof?
participate take
It's
place?
in the fall, I think. Wasn't it like towards
It's
October,
usually
November-ish?
it's usually towards the end of like September, October, correctly. But it does have to be outside traditionally. There in some situations.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
You're skipping ahead.
Oh, I guess we'll get there now. Okay, so here are the rules for constructing a sukkah. It has to have at least 3 walls, has to be at least 3 feet tall, and it has to enclose at least 16 square cubits. The walls have to stand up to wind, otherwise it's not kosher. If you build it up against a pre-existing structure like your house, only one of the walls of the sukkah can belong to that pre-existing structure. The other 2 have to be fresh construction. The roof has to be made of natural materials. Generally, this means scavenging branches and sticks and leaves, but a lot of more sort of observant communities have these woven sheets of straw or bamboo that you can buy and just throw it over the top. The roof has to be thick enough to provide more shade than sun when you're inside the sukkah, but it can't be so thick that you can't see the stars.
You have a box.
You can keep your materials, but you do have to build your sukkah in like the couple of days before Sukkot starts and take it down when Sukkot is over. You're not allowed to leave it up like a Christmas tree. And just like Christmas, some people will leave their sukkahs up for months, but they shouldn't.
Stays after.
My parents, their community in Squirrel Hill, they all have off-of patios, but they're old and so they need help down the basement of the store. But they just ate in them. I think they didn't sleep. They're old.
I was gonna say one of my favorite stories, or sort of neat things regarding Sukkot in the very predominantly Jewish areas of New York City. So Williamsburg and Brooklyn, more Orthodox, will have balconies without awnings, which is not technically up to New York's code, I believe. But there's an exemption for the community because with the awning there, they're not able to build a sukkah out on their balcony.
Or you can't build it underneath another shade providing thing. Like you can't build a sukkah right under a tree.
And when they make the apartment complexes, Squirrel Hill, they don't have a covering because of that. My parents, I'm like, where's the roof? When we go on the patio, they tried to do either. That's the first I'd heard.
So during Sukkot, we have some special prayers involving what are called the 4 species. Essentially, we tie together some different sorts of like branches, and we say some prayers. And there's an etrog involved, which is like an Israeli lemon. We call this shaking a lemon at God in our circles. It looks silly, and nobody's really sure how this started or what it means, but we do it anyways.
You shake them in a little dance.
Yeah, there's a specific choreography, like the directions that you shake the branch and lemon in. Yeah, so you'll take a palm branch, a myrtle branch, and a willow branch and tie them together. You'll have that in one hand and your lemon in the other hand. And there's specific prayers, and you shake in different directions. And I don't remember the directions, I think front, up, down, left, right, back. Something like that.
So are you doing this in your little booth?
Yes, you do this in the booth. And at our synagogue, they have a non-kosher sukkah that is up all year.
We decorate it for Sukkot.
Yeah, we decorate it, but it's still up all year, and it's definitely not kosher because those walls do not block the wind at all.
You need to have a committee to fix that.
But we do shake the lemon. We do that together.
Can you see
Might
it
be
on
on
the street when you drive by?
Yeah, but it just looks like a gazebo type thing.
Okay.
And I did try to build a sukkah last year, and it did not go well. And
We'll try again this year.
it definitely wasn't a kosher sukkah. Right, minor holidays are the ones that are not in the Torah. We just celebrate them to commemorate historical events, and there's no restrictions. First one is Purim. This is sort of like Jewish Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
It commemorates the story of Esther. If you're not familiar, Esther was living in, I want to say Persia, and there was a guy named Haman who wanted to kill all of the Jews. But Esther married the king, so she had a little bit of, she had the king's ear, a little bit of influence, and her cousin or brother, Mordecai, uncle, asked her to talk to the king on the Jew behalf, and he does at the risk of her own life, because you're talking out of turn. You could be executed if the king doesn't like it. but he loves her. So he listens to her and he says, whoever is plotting this will die instead. So Haman is killed, and the ending of this story is kind of complicated because the king says, I can't take back a decree that I've already issued. So instead, I'll issue a second decree that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves, and the Jews kill all of the people who are going to kill them instead. And because of this moral ambiguity, some communities will just avoid reading the last chapter and pretend it didn't happen, but most will sort of spend some time, like with Passover, contemplating what it means for Jewish liberation to come at the expense of others. The major traditions of Purim are to give little gifts of food to your family and friends and also to the poor, and to get so drunk that you can't tell the difference between Haman and Mordecai. There's also a tradition of reading the entire Esther story, and there's a command-ish, sort of, at the end of the book that's, tells us to blot out the name of Haman. So anytime his name is said, we will shout boo and make noise with noisemakers and stuff. It's very fun for the kids.
It's also sometimes called Jewish Halloween because
Yeah, we do wear costumes. Last year we were Elisha and the Bear, if anyone knows that story.
Yes. Did you maul?
If only. All right, next holiday we'll do quickly is Simchat Torah, which is the celebration of the Torah. Simcha means joy. On this day, it is. On this day, we just take the Torah out of the ark and kind of dance around with it. In some places with more Jews, they'll do essentially a parade. And this is just to celebrate the Torah, the book of the law, and essentially our Jewish identity and tradition.
Is this a connected way of reading? You get to the end?
it is actually, isn't it? Simchat Torah is the end. Or no, that's.
I cannot remember. Simchat Torah is not that memorable.
I think it would be with a bigger.
I'm sure it would be.
I personally enjoy that it's one of the few Jewish holidays. Grim to a certain
It's true.
degree.
Yeah. It's one of the very few holidays where we not grapple with moral complexities.
Oh yeah.
Instead, we just dance around with the big scroll.
It's very awkward in a small community because they'll kind of just go down the center of the sanctuary and you're just kind of like doing a little dance while holding a Torah that if you drop, everybody's going to be really freaked out about.
And they're really heavy. They're really heavy, and then we put these velvet clothes on them, and they're wearing a metal crown with some jangly breastplates and stuff.
The Torah.
So we dress the scroll like it's a king, which only makes it heavier. They're so awkward to hold. Yeah. Hanukkah. Yeah, this is the last one that we're going to do. Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. Originally, this commemorated the Maccabean Revolt, which we sort of talked about a little bit earlier on. The heirs of Alexander the Great were trying to put idols in the temple, and generally Jews were getting a little too enthusiastic about Greek culture. So a family called the Maccabees started a military revolt against the Greeks and actually won against all odds. So this is a hooray we won kind of celebration. The rabbis of the Talmud didn't like that story very much, so they added an additional story that says, after the revolt, when the Maccabees went to sort of rededicate the temple, they only had enough oil for the lamps to burn for 1 day, but instead they burned for 8 days, miraculously. So Hanukkah now celebrates the miracle of magical oil. We celebrate this by lighting the menorah. It's a specific menorah called a Hanukkah. A regular menorah has a different number of branches, but we don't really use those anymore because there's no temple. It's kind of a null point. But yeah, we celebrate by lighting candles on the menorah. We eat oily foods, especially potato pancakes. They are so good. And some people will put sour cream on them. Others will put applesauce on them, which sounds really weird, but they're so good with applesauce. And we give chocolate gelt to children, and we play the dreidel game. I mentioned in an earlier class the rabbis Hillel and Shammai, and there are many arguments, of which Shammai lost most of them. This is one of those arguments. The argument is over whether you should start Hanukkah with all 8 candles or with just 1 candle. And Hillel won this argument, and he says we should add candles every night because joy should increase throughout the holiday. So there's 9 spots on the menorah. There's one that's raised above the others. This is the shamash. That one's always lit first. And each night we will add another candle from right to left. Use the shema to light them from left to right. And you put the menorah in a window so that you can advertise the miracle of Hanukkah. Hooray! Any questions about any holidays?
Very informative. Sized culture.
It's only because it falls around Christmas.
It's mostly a reform type
So I
thing
assumed
to
it was
compete
a
with Christmas.
high holiday.
It's
That's really
not
common.
important at all.
The assumption of that Hanukkah is kind of our most important holiday is really common. Because it falls around Christmas, and this is more of a sort of the market realized that around Christmas time Jews felt a little left out, so they started creating a lot of Hanukkah themed sort of decorations and celebratory things, and it sort of became more and more inflated in American.
But halakhically, which means Jewish law, Hanukkah is insignificant pretty much.
You get to play Dreidel Dreidel.
And how do you play dreidel dreidel?
There's 4 different letters on each side of the dreidel, and each of the letters sort of stands for what you do when you get that letter. It's essentially a gambling game. You gamble with your little chocolate coins, and each side will say like, oh, you put a coin in, or you take half of the coins in the pot, or whatever.
You just kind of go through until all the coins in the pot are gone, it's very simple but very fun.
Yeah.
I like the lackeys. Will you make cookies?
No, Xander might if you ask me.
Or
We're done.
okay, so next week,
One more.
and I don't know if everybody knows, Klein or Rabbi did say, there it is, cash in pocket. Just throw that out there. Just support the.
And we are going to try to organize a field trip for everybody to head on over to the synagogue someday.
Oh, cool.
See ya.
And I like this board.
a
That's
live
all
service.
new here that
It was here last
I
week.
put it up last week. It
I
wasn't
wasn't
there
here
the
last
first. And there's a little about me in case you don't know who I am. And there's links to the YouTube where the recordings go up, and the class website where the recordings are also, but also transcripts if you don't want to listen to read instead. Additional readings. To prepare, I wrote articles like this for pretty much everything in the class. And I go into a lot more detail about certain topics that maybe we didn't have time for. So, for example, here we have quotes from scholarly sources. There's pictures. There's a lot of textual analysis. I actually analyze in depth like all 4 of the gospel accounts of the crucifixion in the "Did the Jews Kill Jesus" article. So, if you really want to know more,
It's there.
it's there. You even have a bibliography and everything.
So are you doing this because you're a teacher or
No.
Jewish? No. You're just doing this out of the goodness of your heart, or
I just did this because I got annoyed that people brought bread and pasta and pizza to the Passover thing.
The festival of the unleavened bread with a whole bunch of
When
leavened
we-
bread.
When we did our
Yeah. I was pretty upset because I was really hungry, and then half the food was bread.
There's a very common phenomenon in recent history of sort of more accessibility to like different elements of Jewish culture. Many Christians with nothing but good intentions in their heart want to celebrate and adopt Jewish traditions as sort of the traditions that Jesus would have followed. However, there are, especially surrounding holidays, a lot of misconceptions around what our holidays mean to us, and sort of how we practice them in the modern day versus how we would have been practicing them in the time of Jesus. So this class is a good way to kind of give some more context and education about what these practices mean to us and how they are relevant in our kind of modern society and versus our historical standing of them.
And if you look at the timeline or watch last week's recording, you'll see that most of how we celebrate or observe Judaism sort of crystallized after the time, around the same time that Christianity was really developing. And so
That's not to say that Jews weren't Jews before then, but Rabbinic Judaism and Second Templism have a lot of very ways of practice.
yes.
Appreciate it a lot. So in the weeks and months to come, if you have
Yes. Or you can email me, but don't text. I probably won't see it. My phone automatically blocks non-contact numbers. So if you're not in my contacts, I won't see it.